All right, how's it going, everybody? I'm Joe. I'm with Indie Arcade Wave. I run a podcast that interviews developers in the indie arcade space as well as arcade owners. We just talk about news that's going on in the arcade space for independent developers. So I've been running the podcast for a couple of years now, and I'm part of the Galactic Battleground team. I got a couple of my team members here. We developed basically a 4-player Galaga game that is in the other hall, which you can try out on multiple cabinets. People are really enjoying it. We're going to tell the story of both Galactic Battleground and DeathBall. Tony here made DeathBall. Anybody that's familiar with Killer Queen is going to know about DeathBall.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to kind of go into those stories and then talk about all the other games that are coming out in the indie arcade space. So Kelly, you want to start with Galactic Battleground?
Sure. Hi, my name is Kelly Pangburn, founder of Slackers Inc. and one of the co-creators of Galactic Battleground. This to my right here is Dylan Davis. He is the lead designer of all things art when it comes to Galactic Battleground, and some awesome t-shirts you find at the front shop and also at the Galactic Battleground stand. How did we begin? We started this a few years ago, almost 4 years ago now, just before the pandemic, and we were basically looking at, we had a lot of one-off little mobile apps and things like that, just trying to gain experience in the gaming industry. And then basically one night, after a few influencing ingredients, we decided we wanted to make a new game.
Yeah.
And Dylan was basically saying, I wanted to create something for me. And what did you want to create, Dylan?
Basically a Galaga remake, but co-op.
Yeah, he's like, I want to make Galaga. I was like, well, we can't just make Galaga. That's kind of illegal. So we have to come up with something a little better. And I said, what's the best replayability nowadays when it comes to games that people keep coming back to and you just can't code for, and that's the PvP element. A lot of games are just keep getting better and better because humans find better ways to win at games that you just can't code for anymore, or ever, really. So we wanted to turn some of these retro classic games into a PvP experience. And he was Galaga inspired, and we said, let's just take Galaga and let's see if we can put a ship on top, one on the bottom, and we'll work from there. And we tried it. We came up with a few power-ups to start the experience. I think we came up with 6 that night, between shooting star, reflect shields, red shot, double barrel, and it just grew from there. We actually wrote the mechanics that night, and so shockingly, most of those are still in the game today because they're like the core concepts of the game. And we tried it, and we're like, wow, this is actually something that is kind of fun. Like, who knew, you know? And we were originally planning to send this game out to Steam and just put it out on PCs and Xbox, basically. But then one of our friends, and Joe here, said, boy, this game should probably be an arcade. We're like, really? It's like, we didn't really know like arcades are really springing up at the time. We were just trying to make something cool. And so we talked to an arcade owner. It's like, hey, if we put this in an arcade cabinet, would you let us put it out on the floor? And they said, absolutely. And so they did. So then he's like, but what's real is like, it would be really cool if you could make it 2-on-2. We're like, oh, we just have it 1-on-1 right now. And he said, no, like, best games are like team games on the arcade floor. You know, the Killer Queen was really on its uprise at the time and still is to this day. And they're like, team PvP is really, really exciting. And so I said, well, if I make a 2-on-2 game, would you be interested? And he said, absolutely. So that got Dylan excited because Dylan was really always kind of wanting the 2-on-2 experience. And I was like, wow, I guess I have to do it now. So next few weeks, we coded the 2-on-2 experience. Took us a few, 6 months for the old garage experiment. We made the cabinets over a few weeks and rolled it in, and people liked it. It's been a kind of on a roller coaster ever since. We started our manufacturing prototypes, getting feedback, coming to places like MGC and other conferences, getting feedback, and going from there. The feedback is the biggest critical item when it comes to developing our games. We wanted to find out why mechanics work and why some mechanics don't work, and what could we do to make the game more fun. And a place like this is just awesome for us, so we were super excited. But I've been talking for a lot, so I want Dylan to kind of discuss what his concept as far as the art side of things go.
So basically, all I wanted to do for the art style is copy Galaga as much as possible, so it's relatable to everyone else that plays video games. Essentially, copying it and making it as similar as possible would make Namco sniff our scent, and no bad publicity is still good publicity. Essentially, is what it all comes down to. But I don't know. I took a lot of inspiration from 8-bits, and I did a bunch of tutorials. St. Pedro, guy who did Celeste, is a big pixel art guy, and I just loved all of their games, and anything that's pixel art related and tutorials that could help developers. St. Pedro is the best. They have a Discord. I think it's called Pixel Heroes. Don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's good referencing if you want to get into pixel art. But as for the inspiration, just old school games. I bought some books from the UK that have all the history for like the side art. I did a lot of like Mad Planets, Blaster, Moon Patrol, a bunch of those for like the outside cabinet art. This was my personal inspiration towards it. And coming up with power-ups was kind of just like, we'll see if it works and make pixels work, right?
Yeah, which one's your favorite power-up?
Shooting star is a sniper bullet. It's the best.
One of the first power-ups we put in the game that's still one of the most powerful in the game right now.
Yeah.
So that's a good chunk of what happened with Galactic Battleground. It started, developed on an Apple TV, then moved to an arcade cabinet. 2-player originally, now it's 4-player. More power-ups, more maps, more cabinet designs. It's grown quite a bit since our first year here in 2018. Is that the first year we were in 17?
18, yeah.
17 or 18, one of those 2 years. That was the first time we were here, and that's when we met Tony. We didn't even know about DeathBall at the time. We had seen Killer Queen. We knew that there was kind of an arcade resurgence coming, and we met Tony and Dan from DSM Arcade here. But here's Tony to tell you about DeathBall, which is the best wizard soccer game you're ever going to play.
Hey guys, how's it going? So, I guess my journey started off a little different than these guys. Has anybody here ever played Killer Queen? No, it's a 5-person versus 5. Yeah, you guys have. I know. Yeah, it's a 5-person versus 5-person arcade game. It's developed in 2014, which that originally surprised me. Somebody developed an arcade game in 2014.
Yeah.
And I started playing it, and what happened was very special. I started to make a ton of friends. You know that thing happens in your adult life where you don't know where you make friends anymore because you don't go to school, you have work, that's like your only chance. This is the first time ever where I was making friends in just like a total setting that I was excited about. And I had this idea, I want to make fun like that. That's what I want to do. I want to find a way to make fun like that. And so I started building games, and I had no idea to build games. So what do you do when you don't have any idea how to do something? You watch 10 YouTube videos on how to do it. And that's what I started. Game Maker's Toolkit was one of the best inspirations for me. Highly recommended if you guys are interested in what makes a game fun. Like, that's an interesting question, right? I play a game, it's fun. Why? That is a really great channel to help you understand that. So I built a game and I took it to the arcade and I set it up with controllers. And do you know what happened? Nobody played it. I begged them, please play this game with me, please. Nobody played it. And I took me 2 years of, let me try this game, and I'd build it, and I'd take it there, and like, oh, friends would humor me. And I went through this whole journey, and I got really into VR games. I'm like, I'm gonna build a VR arcade box. Like that's gonna be the future. And I started working on that and decided to move all the way across the country at the same time. So in that process, all my VR stuff's gone. I got 7 days, I got nothing to do. I'm like, I'm gonna build the first game I ever built, this game that I took in and everybody rejected it. I know a lot more now. I'm just gonna start from the ground up. It was when I was living in San Francisco. The second to last day I'm in San Francisco, there's an arcade tournament. I take this setup with the controllers and I set it down and somebody plays with me and they do this thing that has never happened before. They turn to me and go, "Can we play again?" And I was like, "Yes, we can." And all of a sudden, like a line started forming, and I knew there was some like magic to this game. So the bar manager and bar owner said, "If you build this game into a cab, we'll put it into this bar." And so all of a sudden, VR was out the window. Like that was a very hard problem that I was going to set myself onto solving. I have a solution now. Let's keep working on that. So I'm going to build a cab, right? I don't know how to build a cab. So what do you do when you don't know how to do something?
YouTube it again.
You watch 10 YouTube videos, and I built the worst cab possible. Like it was bad. But here's the thing that I really want to impress on you guys.
Joe.
You have to build something that's really bad before you can build something that's really good.
Our cab was really bad too.
Yeah. So that cab is still alive. It still exists. It's in Detour Bar in San Francisco. That's the original person that said, "I'll give you this chance." We just sent out our 35th cab, and that cab is great. That cab is really good. That cab is not the first cab.
I'm just waiting for our first cab to come back like, oh, it finally fell apart. It's like, oh, darn.
Yeah.
Like, not surprised.
Yep. And so it's taken a long time. That's another thing I'd like to make very clear. DeathBall, which is approaching a success, is a 5-year endeavor at this point. So baby steps are really important to that process. I mean, I could get into the mechanics of the game, but if you are interested in what it takes to go from nothing to an arcade cabinet, come to the main hall and I'll show you the game. That'll be way better than me trying to describe to you guys how it all works. But the thing is, we did it. We have made a box that you put it in a place and people come together and they have fun. And so like regardless of financially how successful it is, I feel like I've made some success that way.
We kind of the same concept, Tony. Like Dylan and I and Joe, once he came on board the team, we were just like, we want to make something that's just fun to play. Like I remember the very first time we had our like code prototype in my garage. Like we literally combined like 2x4s and
some plywood,
2x4s and plywood. There was just cords going to a LCD monitor. There was a small, well, actually it was very small, but we're just testing code. We didn't build anything. It was the worst setup possible. And it was crazy.
We got a question out in the audience there. I'm the DeathBall creator. These guys make an awesome game.
We make a game too.
Galactic Battlegrounds, but we're indie arcade developers. Is the reality there?
We're here discussing the indie arcade wave development process and what we think the future is going to be as well. And
we're here discussing business models that went out of date in the 90s. No, I'm kidding. It's coming back. It's like, that is, okay, actually, low key, thank you, Pinball, for somehow making arcades survive the like Christian panic of the 90s. Somehow Pinball was like, no, it's got a real ball, so that's not bad. We'll let that keep going. And so like, thank you. Here's a question. Have you made a friend playing DeathBall? Yeah. I mean, I'm sure your friends. Okay. Okay, well that happens too.
We have a barcade in Madison, IO.
IO, yeah. I love IO.
We're in IO.
That's awesome, and that's
shout out to Mitchell for bringing us both into IO. Great arcade.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, like a place for people to come together and have fun. And I guess there was a time when, like, if anybody's played Rocket League and DeathBall, there's an obvious like inspirational connection there. But when I would sit down and play Rocket League, I would play alone in my living room, and it was an existence around video games that was started to feel so foreign to me because I came up playing GoldenEye on a couch with a bunch of other people who cheated by looking at my screen, and that's how they knew that I was up in the. No, but that's the point. Like, I wanted to rebuild that fun that you had when you stood there next to somebody and competed with them. You know?
Yeah, 100%. Like the atmosphere, the barcade scene has grown in the last 10 years, basically. You know, like coming back together. It's our generation, Tony and I, are basically like, oh, I remember these games. It's so great, so much fun, and you go into that atmosphere. It's like, oh, now I can drink beer and enjoy these games that I used to play and stuff like that. And we kind of sit there going like, that was only going to last for so long because the content's going to say, you can only play Miss Pac-Man and Galaga and all those games so much, but then barcades are going to need new content. They're going to need new things to play. And that's Tony and I and Dylan and Joe are trying to find a way to like fill the void. Like the big companies like Namco and others, and Atari, they're not trying to make new arcade games really. Like Raw Thrills is doing it, but they're doing it like big. They're doing like the big Halo, like granuloso, like colossal, gigantic games, which are fun, but it's still not the core concept of like shoulder to shoulder, like we're Ninja Turtling this thing right now and trying to smashing buttons. You know, and that's what it's all about, is just getting together, having friends, making new friends, and Tony's 100% correct. Playing games that are simple enough, because, and I'm going to kind of dive into like why our games are the way they are. Like, we design our games to be like extremely approachable. Like, you want to be able to walk up and be like, I feel like I can master this game in 1 or 2 tries. Halo game and like the new games that are coming out by us like that, those are console games. But like the arcade games you see out there, they're like, I have to sit in like this cockpit and like I don't know what's going on. It's just so weird. And I actually grew up on Halo and I loved Halo, but I don't want to play the arcade games because it just seems so overwhelming.
I think the key here is you're going to put a quarter in to try something, and then you're going to be done. And in that 3 minutes, I have to convince you to put another quarter in. And so, like, I want to leave you with this feeling of, I kind of understood what was going on, but I know there's more I can do. And that's kind of like, that's the really comes down to, you're designing for arcade. That's not like designing for somebody's living room. There's a lot of rules there. Your game has to end in 3 minutes, and your game has to like continue to entice people to play. So,
and it has to make money for the bar owner to buy it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it all comes down to. You got to make the owner of the cab money. Otherwise, we can't charge as much as we charge for the cabs. That's how it works.
Yeah, it's a very fine line to walk, and things that we're trying to walk through, because you can make a great game and nobody will play it because it feels too complicated, or you can't think, or it takes too long, and they only make $10 in an hour. Like that's not enough, So it's like making a great game that's short enough, that makes money. If you want to keep putting quarters in, it's actually difficult, but yet fun at the same time from us as a developer point of view.
Yeah, you mentioned the idea that arcades are making a big resurgence. We're seeing it constantly. I mean, there's arcade bars all over the country that weren't there 2, 3, 4 years ago. And even with looking at Uptown, like it started as one location, then it was 3, now I think it's 8 or 9, and they're all over the country. So we're seeing arcades like this open up in different regions where they're kind of expanding out. I know that Texas is insane. I know Killer Queen is like the biggest indie arcade game. I don't think any of us would argue that. Most states have 1, maybe 3 in the entire state. I think like Dallas, Fort Worth had something like 14. So the Dallas area is just like absolutely exploding with arcades, and you're seeing more arcades open constantly. You mentioned earlier that you can only play Donkey Kong, Galaga, Miss Pac-Man so many times before you're sick of the content. You want to play something new. So there are 15 developers right now that are releasing new games, ranging anywhere from like Killer Queen to endless runners like Switch and Shoot and Black Emperor. And there's just tons of different games that are coming out to create new content for these spaces and really bring people back to what was like the retro arcade stuff. Like, we want to keep it as classic as we possibly can, but to also bring that new Wave side of designing and enticing people to play and play longer, enjoy the games more with their friends. We want to bring back the camaraderie of the arcade space so that you can run in there and meet somebody you've never met and become friends with that person and be like, hey, next Saturday, you're going to be here? Sweet, awesome, I'll be here too. So it gives a completely different ambiance to those arcades as opposed to everybody going in to play single player high school games. And that's really the focus with Indie Arcade Wave, is to showcase all of these awesome developers that are in the space. I mean, we only have 2 of the teams here. There's dozens of them. So, and we've had 3 or 4 people.
Literally dozens.
Yeah, dozens, literally dozens of us. So we've had 3 or 4 people already this weekend walk up saying, I'm designing this game, I want to put it in a cabinet, how do I do that? And the easiest advice is usually just go find an old cab that's, beat up, the game's not working, and just gut it. Start from there. Start with a cabinet so you can start cheap.
Do whatever it takes to get it inside a cabinet and then place it somewhere.
Yeah, placing it somewhere is important. It's always good to ask your local arcades first if they're interested in having the game to showcase, because you want to be able to test it right away after that.
I feel like step one, and this is why I think Indie Arcade Wave is so important, is get in touch with the community. We're here. We want to help you. The best thing that ever happened to me is Nikita and Josh, who made Killer Queen. I asked them straight up when I was about to get into this, if you were starting all over from the ground up and you were going to build a cab, what would you do differently? And they didn't say that's a trade secret. They said, let me help you out. And that saved me years of experience because they've done it already. And we're here to pass that on. So
yeah, that's a really unique thing about the indie community in the arcade space is we have a Discord for Indie Arcade Wave. You can jump in there. All of these developers that I'm talking about are in there. And you just ask a question, they're more than happy to talk to you. We want to share the knowledge of how we've gotten to where we are with these games because they are passion projects at their core. We want to make money out of them. Obviously, we're not going to lie about that. But we're making them because we wanted to make a Galaga game. That's what we wanted to play. So multiplayer Galaga is what came out.
We kind of went into it saying we don't really care a lot about if it's going to be the best game in the world or the worst game in the world. We just want to make a game that's kind of fun for us to play whenever, for us. It's we just was we're going to try this and it's going to be cool. We'll keep playing it ourselves. And if people like it, great, kind of thing. But going back to the trade secret thing and stuff like that, there's a Slack and a Discord out there. There's the Indie Arcade Wave Discord, and there's also a Slack for independent developers that are really good. You just post a question hey, how do I make this controller? I don't know what I'm doing. And there'll literally be 5 people responding. There'll be no traffic on that for 2 weeks because someone talk a lot, but it's a great place to ask questions. And then they just immediately I tried this, or this would work for me, or this will work for them. And it's great. The independent developers are some of the best people I ever met. Meeting Tony and Shane and Dave from Cosmotrons and Dan from DSM, and I can't mention them all, but really, really good people that really work together. And like you said, the Killer Queen people, Nikita, Josh, it's been great working with all these guys and bouncing ideas off each other to make ourselves better as a group and our games will improve as we support each other.
there is no way that there is just one successful modern cabinet. That wouldn't work. That means if there's only one person, that means that nothing happened. This whole wave fizzled out. So we want to be about helping people get involved. The more people we get building these things, the more we get bars to see that they want new content as arcades and the machines, the more we'll be successful. So there is a benefit from doing that together. And I think another important thing is, if you play video games, if there's something you love, then there's probably a unique perspective out there that nobody's tapped into. And when I set out to build my game, I was playing Killer Queen, Rocket League, and this game called Downwell. And if you know those three games and then you play my game, it's obvious, but it's different than all three of those games. So there's some nugget of interesting thing I found across all three of these games that I was able to pull into one thing. And it's the same way with
Galaga and Asteroid, right?
Sure. And so your perspective has value. Get involved. We're happy to help out.
Yeah, it doesn't take a lot to get involved either. I know you said There are people that have played DeathBall, Killer Queen in the crowd. Have you guys played anything like Black Emperor, Switch and Shoot, Nidhogg 2, any of the other games that are out? None of those other games, okay. So there's this awesome guy, Dan, from DSM Arcade. He wasn't able to make it this weekend. This is where we all met the same year at MGC. And Dan has taken a different route on the Indie Arcade Wave thing, which we think is really cool. He went to developers who already made games like Switch and Shoot and Nidhogg 2 are the ones that he has right now, which are already both successful games.
They're great games.
Yeah, they're great games. So he reached out to the developers of these games that he really enjoyed and just said, can I put it in an arcade cabinet? So he went ahead and got on board with that developer and built them custom cabinets and is now producing them to put them in arcades. So you don't have to have your own original game either. If you find a game that you really love that you think could be in the arcade space and could do well in the arcade space, you can just reach out to that developer because, you know, we're all in this together. We're just, you know, trying to make cool stuff. Like that's what the goal is at the end of the day. So reaching out to a developer if you're interested in building cabinets, there's a lot of ways to get into the scene. Like I can't code and I don't do art, but I'm into the scene because I help connect all these people and help share their stories. So anybody that wants to contribute to building arcade cabinets, there's a lot of ways into it.
Yeah, absolutely. The prototype that you see in the other arcade hall there for Galactic Battleground, that's all white. That would not have been completed if it wasn't for Joe making cold calls to the company saying, where are we at right now with this? Because he was a lifesaver to make sure that got done in time. And like he said, everybody can help contribute to the Indie Arcade Wave. That's basically happening now, where people are getting together, making games, making cabinets for games, which is, people just don't even think like, oh, I build a cabinet for a game. Like, yeah, absolutely, why not? Because if it makes sense, put it in the cabinet.
Yeah, I guess to kind of go off of what we're already talking about with how to get involved in the space, we're a team of 3, and we had a 4th for a little while. Miles was doing some of our marketing, and he's kind of still involved with the team here and there. But we built the game as 4 people, and we struggled through that quite a bit to get it to where it is. Tony built it by himself. So this guy did everything. He did the art, he did the coding.
Well, I struggled too, though.
You struggled a lot too, but I want to know what's unique about your perspective of like, how did you do everything?
Okay, so I will, by myself is not, I wouldn't call that accurate. I'm the only person as part of the DeathBall company, but like there is an awesome shop that makes our cabs and they've always worked with us. We have a league in my hometown that like DeathBall would not exist without them because like I cannot test things by myself. You know how many times I've gone to league thinking I have developed something that's very interesting and very cool and we'll play it with 2 players and it's nothing. It's like just because like it doesn't make sense with 2 players. Like so like I haven't done it by myself. But if you're looking for the perspective of being in the company alone, it's you gotta get help. You have to find those people that are going to provide that value to you and like. Finding these guys was very helpful in that, and finding people like that play in the league at home was very important in that. So you'll never do it by yourself, but you know, like, and it's all, you know, I think it's funny that you say that you had your complications with people because I always think about, man, it'd be great if I had another person around, but you don't think about the fact that you have to then convince that person of all your ideas too, right? Because obviously, like, so yeah, there's always a trade-off too.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me to see how the scene has grown. I mean, when we first got here, has anybody played Cosmotrons? Anybody here played Cosmotrons? It's here. Yeah, you play Cosmotrons? Okay. So
please check it out in the arcade hall in the back.
Shane and Dave have been coming here for years. And they have this awesome game called Cosmotrons, which is kind of like asteroids meets.
It's a vector.
It's
a throwback to the vector graphics. So you know, Tempest and things like that, like very vector-based graphics, but PvP. Like like we said in the beginning, like player versus player aspect with vector graphics. Very very true to the genre back when that was the only way you could make video games.
So that's just another indie game that's in the space, and they're here right now. They have their setup in the other hall, which you guys can try out the game. It's not on their full cabinets, which their full cabinets were the coolest thing. They have these huge fiberglass, futuristic, like they look like they're 200 years in the future kind of vibe to their cabinets. Super spaceship. and they developed their game as well, just the two of them. Just for anybody that's interested in doing it, like, you can do it. Everybody here is working like full-time jobs, like, so it's a passion project that you can easily tap into if you're into developing. And the resources are there. They're so easy to get in touch with, and anybody can help you build a cabinet. Anybody in your local area.
Should we talk about like what's it like to try to get into arcades? Like, so you build a cabinet, you test in your arcade, you're trying to like get people to play the game, you're at conferences and you get your feedback, and then like what do you do now? Like, how do you get this game into actual arcades for going forward? What are the steps we do to like either sell it and or produce it?
Well, that's the fun part. That's the cold calling part. That's the part that everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to call somebody and say, hey, here's my thing, you should buy it, but you have no idea what it is and you probably have no reason to buy it. So it's just a lot of reaching out, getting to know these people, finding other people that are already in the space. You know, if somebody's interested in a Killer Queen, they already have a cabinet, they got sold on a $14,000 cabinet. So it should be fairly easy for you to, get in there if you're in the $5,000 range. And those arcades want something new. Those people are looking for something weird. They want to be that one arcade that has like, what the hell is this thing that's over in the corner? I've never seen that. I want to have something different than everybody else. And there's a few arcades in the country that really, really stand out to me that think this. And that's a Glitch Bar down in Fort Lauderdale. Shout out to Dwight and Chris. Those guys have every indie game. They have not passed up on one. I think they've got 13 or 14 games in there, and that's their main pull. Is they run a national tournament for Killer Queen, and they had a tournament with Armed and Gelatinous, Galactic Battleground, Switch and Shoot, Nidhogg, Black Emperor, missing some DeathBall. They had so many games there, and they're an arcade that are really fostering the community. So there are arcades in, I feel like, every state that really is interested in the indie scene and bringing something new. Because I just spoke with somebody about this the other day, and why arcade? Like that, I feel like that's such a good question that people ask. Like, why would you want to develop an arcade game when you can just make a game and just drop it on Steam and call it? It's so much easier. There's way less headache in doing that, and it's on your own schedule. You get paid right away. We all have to be a little bit crazy to go through what we go through to make these games, just because we love them. And that's the truth of it. You got to be able to put in extra hours to go through the headache of, when you just spent like 9 hours like in the last couple of days getting the computer to work again on a game that was already functioning. Yeah. Like stupid little things happen and you keep pushing through it just because you want to do it.
I cried a little.
He did. But the community is there. It's fostered in arcades, so you can reach out to like Wonderville. Wonderville's a great example too. They're in Brooklyn, New York, run by Mark and his wife Stephanie, and they only do indie games. So he's with the university in New York. He teaches classes on Unity, how to code, how to make games, and the games that stand out to him every semester he builds a cabinet for, and then he puts it in his arcade. So he's got something like 32 arcade cabinets at this point, and 30 of them are one of one. So if you ever make it out to Brooklyn, that's the place to go.
Yeah, and just to color that a little bit, to find bars that are willing to take a chance on you is rare.
Yes.
Bars want to make money. And when you say my cab costs $6,000 and there's a cab that people already know about, it's already got its brand out there and it costs $1,200, it's really hard to convince them that yours is worth more or worth that much. But first of all, there is a limited supply of those cabinets. Secondly, there is a growing number of people who want to play in arcades. So the math there says that we need to have new games. The other thing that I think that is really important, and it takes time to convince them of, is that your game's popularity hasn't peaked yet. Like
you're getting in early. You're
growing. This is the beginning. Pac-Man is as popular now as it will never be more popular tomorrow than it is today. I shouldn't say that. As soon as I say something like that, they'll prove me wrong. But the point is, like, it's waning in its popularity. Don't get me wrong, it's a great game. Apparently, with inflation, it's had over $1 billion in quarter drops, which is kind of crazy. But it's waning. So it's all about focusing them on this idea that your game is going to be new, it's going to build community, and that community is going to become the mainstay of your customers. And thank God for Killer Queen for going out ahead of us and doing a lot of that education, because it does take a little bit of education to get people convinced that this is what they need to invest in if they believe in arcades and they believe in the future of arcades.
Yeah, it's the community. When is the last time you heard, like, I'm in a city, I can't wait to find the Pac-Man community and start joining and enjoying league nights on Pac-Man. It's just not happening, you know? So, like, our games are replayable and stuff like that, and I'm going to throw shade, like Nameco and other companies, the big companies like that, they're now looking to make these kind of games that are replayable and that are going to be cult classics. They're looking to make the quick buck, and they just put an
IP drop.
They just made an 8-player Pac-Man that shows up in the Dave & Buster's. That was their main goal for 2022. Sorry, Trader Inside Secret. But still, like, they're just repeating the same repeating the same IP. I'm trying not to swear, over and over again at the people, and that only lasts for so long. And we're basically like, it's time for something better, it's time for something new, and that's kind of where this indie arcade wave has started. And why Joe started a podcast around it, just to let people know, like, hey, we're making something awesome, and you should check it out.
It's kind of because they're sane and they know, they have business degrees and they know how the world works and how to make money. But too bad, because we're fucking crazy and we don't need to make money. We just need to make games. No, we need to make money. Please give us money.
Yeah, we do
take money.
But I guess just on the community side still, we've got all these great developers, we've got all these great arcades, we've got all these great conventions just like this one. Dan has been huge. I mean, we can't say thank you to Dan enough.
Dan Lutz is amazing.
Yep.
The guy is, I swear, he emails me back every time at like 3 a.m. This guy never sleeps. So he's constantly trying to build this unique community for people like us to bring in the weird stuff that we want to build in our free time. If you're interested in the podcast at all, it's on YouTube, Spotify, all that stuff. Indie Arcade Wave, 112 plus episodes now, where we talk to arcade owners and indie developers, cabinet builders, anything in that sphere. Music, yeah,
art.
just to cover the overarching area of video games and just to cover news that's in the space. So we've got a little bit of time. Does anybody have questions for us?
I have our host, man. Always over there. Whatever. Otherwise, we can keep talking about.
They don't have to be about video games. They can be about
anything.
I have a question. If I repeat the question, do we sell any warranties with our arcade cabinets? Like, what happens if one of our joystick breaks, or the code doesn't work, or something happens to the game and it's just not playable anymore? How do we handle that? Like, for example, we have our games. We're up in the Midwest, and we have games in Fort Lauderdale. How do we handle it?
So we warranty them for a certain amount of time. Obviously, like I think with Galactic Battleground, everything is warranted for the first year. And then parts we're pretty flexible on. We can let you know kind of like what parts you need. We get them mostly from Paradise Arcade, who Brian is here this weekend. Awesome place to get arcade pieces or arcade parts. And we'll send them out. One thing that made me laugh about the warranty side was there's an arcade down in Florida, which I already mentioned, Glitch Bar. And Dwight says that his favorite thing about the indie games is they don't really break. He doesn't really have issues with them.
Yeah.
He has a lot of classic games and he has problems, but we have newer hardware. You don't have so many things going on the inside of the cabinet. It's a pretty basic PC build. And he made me laugh because he said he calls these bigger companies, right, to get help for warranties and customer service. And he talks to somebody that doesn't really have any say in what's going on and needs to get sent to somebody else. When you call us, you're calling the guy that coded. Yeah, we care. Like, we're gonna get you that joystick tomorrow. Like, that's an issue for us. So
yeah, I'll give like a couple real life examples that happened. Dwayne Glitch Bar called and said that somebody stole my joystick heads. So we just sent two the next day.
yeah, they wanted a trophy for spring break,
Apparently
so
it
they
came
checked
out.
it out.
Then we sent also a pack of glue so they can glue them back on so they don't come off. Another thing happened, Chris out in Philadelphia had
Loctite
one
your
of our-
joystick tops. Loctite.
Yeah, Loctite is the name to do that. So Loctite, you get it at your local Menards or Ace Hardware. Very good stuff. Another example is Chris Myers on Philadelphia had one of our GBGs out there, and the game just died basically, and we determined that with the power supply, a lot of these companies already have on-site staff, so we can just send them a part, and they just will put it in. So we sent them a bigger, beefier power supply. Other guy said my controller doesn't work, and we just sent them the little board that we put in there to replace the thing. So a lot of these bars are more than happy to like replace parts, because our parts are very easy to replace compared to parts that are in like all these old games and stuff like that. So it's like modern tech, and it's and I can't speak for DeathBall, but like GBG is like, it's very modularized, so it's very easy to get stuff in. Our joysticks, for example, too, we had a joystick that broke, and we work with that guy Brian out at Paradise Arcade, and he's got like 50 on staff, so it's like go over there, send it out. I actually just give him the address, just send that to him quick and stuff like that. And they like I said, we actually care, and so we warranty. So we will warranty things like from a legal standpoint. I'll warranty things for 2 years, for parts, because I want to keep the game running. If they're making money, then they're happy, and then they're pushing our game. Because if we keep the games running, then the word will keep spreading. So then the word of mouth spreads. Because if it's down, it's detrimental to both of us, basically. So it's been in our best interest to keep them happy as best as possible.
It's also that the arcades themselves, they have, there's an expectation that they will be able to maintain a cabinet, because the micro switches run out. Everything is run on a micro switch. It does not last forever. You will need to replace those. You will need to replace springs and joysticks. You will need to re-grease your actuators. Like, this stuff is something that is part of the maintenance of a cab like this, that the nice thing about selling to an arcade is that either they have considered it already or they're not a very good arcade. So,
yeah, micro switches are the things that are underneath the buttons that actually triggers the signal to go to the computer and stuff like that. And those happen all the time. It is a certain expectation that arcade owners just know. They always have an on-site staff or on-site company that they just ship games to and have things get fixed with it. So they just want to get things to work, so they understand it. And unless it's local, like in local terms, then I'll just go myself. It's just easier.
Yeah, it runs along kind of the replacing stuff. It's a lot easier with our games to replace stuff too, because you may have a game that's a little bit more rare, harder to find a specific part for. You got to dig around, try and find it for so long, and hope it works by the time it gets shipped to you, because that part's already 40 years old. If your CRT goes down, you gotta replace the caps or whatever, and it's just a pain to move that thing. If our monitor breaks, you're just going to Best Buy and buying plastic. Yeah, it's pretty easy to replace that, and pretty much anybody that's relatively computer savvy can fix anything in our cabinet. So you don't have to really be an arcade tech.
If I can give one tip for anybody who's looking to make a cabinet, cup holders. Or make your playfield slanted as possible so they can't possibly put a beer or a drink on it. We have a cabinet, our very original prototype, it was flat. And we had cup holders on it, but they still won't use the cup holders because they just set it down right there. And I've had to replace sticks 2 times in the last 3 years because drinks will spill on it. And it's fine because I know I'm not going to rebuild that cabinet, but just try to make sure that either cup holders on the side or cup holders in front, or make your playfield slanted so they cannot possibly set it near your buttons and your sticks. That's my biggest tip about anybody that's looking to make cabinets.
Yeah, if you ever play on a cabinet, you're like, why isn't anything flat on here? That is why. There's no surfaces to set stuff is the goal.
We encourage drinking around our games, just not on top of our games.
It's about longevity at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for us?
Yes, in front. Where would we recommend going around here? Our favorite place around here is Uptown. Uptown in Milwaukee is a really good layout. They have a lot of the classic games, of course, many pinballs. They have a Killer Queen. We were actually one step away from demoing Galactic Battleground there in February of 2022 or 2020, and of course March 2020 happened and everything just shut down. And so we're probably going to restart those talks again now that things are on the upswing and arcades are getting into black again. But yeah, if you're in the local arcade scene around Milwaukee, that is the best place to go. If you want to go a little further, you can go to Madison. IO Arcade is a great place to go. They have DeathBall and Galactic Battleground there. And Killer Queen. And I think
he might have a Nidhogg too. As well.
Yeah.
They also have that game with They also have this weird game that's like Arkanoid, but like hockey. You know, like when you play air hockey, but you can like have multiple paddles and you just try to score at each other. There's only one of one there.
Yeah, that's the only one. Those are local developers from Madison.
I forgot what it's called though. I wish I had more information on it, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess thinking of other places in the area, I know Minneapolis is probably a little bit farther of a drive for you thinking, but that's another Uptown. Obviously, they've got a Killer Queen, a Deathball, Switch and Shoot, a Nidhogg, a Black Emperor. There's a lot in the Midwest, actually. The Midwest is a very, very popular place. Geeks Mania too.
Chicago, Logan Arcade.
Yeah, Logan Arcade.
Arcade.
Yep. You got Cosmotrons.
There's a lot. I'm like blanking on a lot. There's a lot of really good ones in the Midwest for sure.
Galloping Ghost.
Yep. Dog's got a couple. I just spoke with him recently. I don't remember what he has though.
Everything.
He doesn't have any arcades.
Well, yeah, the indie games. I don't know what he has, but yeah, that guy's got everything.
Primal Rage 2.
Yeah, he's got Primal Rage 2. That's pretty cool. Yeah, good luck finding that anywhere else like in the world. Anybody else have curiosities, questions for us?
Comments, smart remarks.
Comments.
I feel like most of our deadlines end up being conventions.
I mean, it goes hand in hand. Like if you're developing a game from scratch, like you want to get it done to a certain point, but then you want people to play test it. And if you do a play test, then it keeps getting prolonged, and before you know it, it's 5 years later, and your game still has things that need to be tweaked or, be mastered for best play. Like we made new game mode, like 2 years ago, and now our game is finally complete.
But yeah, we keep thinking of things that we want to add to it. It's like a process. So we actually have, and go back to your other question about fixing things. We actually, I know DeathBall and I both installed ways to remote update the code as well. So as long as the game's on Wi-Fi, which is something advantage we have over other games, is we can make new features and say this game is going to evolve, it's going to get better, and because we take what we've learned at conventions and stuff like that, and just put up the cabs and that are already out on the field. But as far as timelines go, it's when we first set out to it, we didn't have any timeline, but it was always something that drove the next feature. Like we want to get this feature done before the next conference or the next debut. We set up to go look at certain bars. Like we kind of target like tournaments that are happening at bars and say, oh, there's a tournament happening there for a certain game. So if we get there, we get some really competitive people that can latch onto this. So it always seems like we have this feature and we learn about something that's coming up and then they just kind of connect. So it's a little bit of a, chasing your own tail a little bit, but still at the same time, we're our own bosses. So like we set our own, we never had a deadline saying, well, once we get to this spot where it's done and whatever happens. No, it's not like that. It's more like, well, let's get to this point and see what happens. And then we see what happens and then we want to do something else. It's just, that's how I feel about it. What are you, Tony?
My big motivator generally is league night, which is Thursdays. And like I said, I have a unique set of problems where it's very hard for me to test things like maps. It's very hard for me to see how maps will play competitively. I can mess around with them singularly. So at 7 p.m., we're going to meet for league. If I don't have a map ready by 7 p.m., I have to wait all the way till next week to test it. So, I'm always trying to get everything in before 7 so we can get that weekly test in. And things are still changing. The hardest part for me is I often think about, is this DeathBall 2 or is this a DeathBall patch? And like things we're doing now where if you've ever played DeathBall, you're a wizard, you have the spell, it's called a bubble. You hold it, it makes a hard bubble. Well, we're actually experimenting in our league with different wizard powers, and that is actually on the cab here, where you can make wind, or you can make, there's an earth power, there's a fire power, and like, it feels like DeathBall 2, but we're gonna package it as an upgrade, and we might sell it. We might sell it as like, this is bigger than the old game you had, so you have to pay to upgrade it, but it's not like the old games where I have to give you a cartridge, and this cartridge has to have the game on it. It has evolved. It started with 1 map, it's up to 9 maps, and so if the question is, am I done with DeathBall yet? I'm not, and I won't be, and I don't know, I don't know. You'll have to make me stop working on DeathBall, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I feel almost the same. Like, we redid our quote-unquote menu system 9 months ago, and that's 4 years into it. And by redo, I mean we took it out. If I have another pro tip on anybody that's looking to make an arcade game, make it as fast as possible from the quarter entry to they're actually playing the game. That was the hardest thing that we learned, and Tony figured it out way quicker than us because his was like, you're in right away. But we were like, oh, choose your skin, choose your power up, choose your friend, like whatever. It's like, no, put the button in, or put the quarter in, push the button, and start shooting people. That's what they want to do, because your attention span is like less than a second. Because if they're not in there killing something or collecting something or whatever, they're just gonna move on.
Flashing lights.
Yeah, it's a lot of testing, a lot of information that you can get from developers if you're interested in coming into the space at all. And on that point, I think that was our 8th iteration of the UI that we were just like, yup, this is done, goodbye. We don't want to waste time here anymore. So yeah, it's a labor of love. It's never done. That's definitely fair to say, because we thought it was done 6 times ago when we were working on it.
You don't want to discourage people saying like, oh, you're going to be doing this forever, because it's not that bad.
You're choosing to do it. It's not like you're being forced to do it, which is the next thing. But
it's one of those things where you just find something and you enjoy it, so you keep going at it.
Yeah, I can.
Good question.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Like, I didn't set up for this company to make games or to make money. I set out in this company to make places that bring people together. And so I wanted it to be an arcade. And, I love karaoke. I love that there's something to be a little bit about, there's a performance to an arcade, like there's other people watching, and if you're the best Street Fighter player, that means something, So I love that, because that's bringing the human back to the game. We sit in our couches and we play single player game, or we play multiplayer games, and we never see another person, and it makes us really terrible communicators and empathizers. And if you just need an example to feel this, try walking through a group of people or driving through a group of cars. When you're walking through a group of people, oh yeah, you go first. When you're driving in a group of cars, once you take that human face away, and that's my spot. Don't dare try to cut into mine. So I love the empathy that you feel sitting next to somebody else and playing, and it's not I beat you or we had this really great game together. That feeling is special, and that's why I chose arcade.
Taking the toxicity out of games, basically.
Yeah, it's so different, especially with everything that, the world being shut down and everything. Coming back to a position where we can be in a place with other people and play a game that we all enjoy and talk trash the whole time we're playing it. And then at the end be like, all right, awesome, good game. Thanks for playing, really enjoyed it. Like it's completely different than playing a game of Call of Duty or whatever, and you're yelling at somebody and then you leave the lobby and that's that. You never actually said thanks or anything. It's completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that wraps everything up. So I guess let's just shout out everybody's social media so that anybody that's interested in following the games can check everybody out.
Galactic Battleground, DeathBall, and the Arcade Wave, all on every single social media, correct?
Pretty much. Yeah.
We're DeathBall Arcade on most
DeathBall
things,
Arcade.
and deathball.cav is the site if you're ever interested in a little more information.
Yep, and then we got galacticbattleground.com, GBG the game on Twitter, Galactic Battleground on Instagram and Facebook. If you do Google it, you will find Star Wars Galactic Battleground, just letting you know.
That's got an S
So-
on the end of it. Though.
Oh yeah,
It's different.
but just make sure you type in arcade at the end.
And then Indie Arcade Wave, primarily
We're
the
a call
podcast
second.
runs on YouTube and Spotify. You can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything. Episodes release, I try to do them weekly, sometimes it's bi-weekly, but there's generally a new episode every 2 weeks. And then I do arcade walkthroughs too. So if you're looking for arcades that may have indie games in them, I'll probably have showcase them.
And if you have any more questions, we're at D5 Pillar in the main room. Just let us know.
D5?
Or D4, I don't know.
Oh shoot!
D5,
Well,
D4. It has
We're
a
in
D
that
on it,
area.
I don't know.
We're at the end of the
You gotta do that.
Can't miss the gigantic Galactic Battleground sign if you walk around the arcade hall.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for checking us out and listening to what we had to say.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
thanks, y'all.